to the Board of Commissioners, Board of Directors work session meeting for Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. We have two major topics before us this afternoon. The first relating to our third and final round of voter surveys for our two countywide local option levies, the library levy and the public safety levy, and for subsequent review of the proposals. So we have a great panel of experts, including some outside folks as well. So at this juncture, I'll turn it over to Philip Ransford to take us through, figure out who's speaking to the slides first.
Okay, I will turn it right over.
It's hard to know.
I know.
The point.
There's a lot of names on this slide.
You had
One Washington
channel. Oh,
Easy, mighty miles, go.
yeah. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington report. For the record, in the audience, I'm Marty Kyle, one of the assistant county administrators. As I thought about today's presentation, I thought of the last 5K in a marathon. There are points when you're running a marathon when you mentally and physically wonder, am I going to finish this? I get this done. And right now, that's where we are. We're at the last 3 miles. We have our second wind, and we might even speed up just a bit because we know the finish line is now in sight. It's that little push that gets you across the finish line. So that's what I thought when I was preparing for today.
What marathon are you participating in?
None right now. It's ancient history here. So while today we're at that mile marker, we're so close we can see the finish line, and we will strive with purpose to succeed in our goals. As always, we want to start by thanking the steering committee, including the subject matter experts that have spent many, many hours, and you as board members. Thank you so much for all of the time and effort that you've been spending with us to get us to this point.
I want to know if there's goo available.
Ugh, I tend to like the ginger snap cookie.
Okay.
So as you can see, today's purpose is really to share the results from the third round of the voter survey and present our levy proposal for your board's consideration. As we review the materials today, please keep in mind these questions. Does the board have any other questions? And does the board wish to approve the final versions of the levy proposals and direct staff to bring those proposals as an action item for your board meeting on the 19th? We'll revisit these at the end of this presentation. This is a familiar slide for you. As you can see, we are in the final stages of this project timeline. We are providing and have provided information to interested parties. We're finalizing our material. We have been seeking and have approval from the Secretary of State's office for many of our educational materials and really moving forward. We have filed both the library and the public safety levy and now have completed ballot titles, descriptions, and we have ballot numbers as you see up there. We have also begun our public education and outreach work. We attended the fair just a couple of weeks ago, and then we also have begun our city council circuit. We started with Cornelius and North Plains presentations last night, and from what I hear, they both went very well. I was at one, so I know that one went really well, and then heard that North Plains similarly went well. So I think without further ado, I will turn this presentation over to Sienna and EMC Research to give you here's a little hint, give you the good news from our latest polling.
Yes, I'm very excited to be back with you again today and very happy to have good news for you. Can you hear me okay in the room?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, as I said, we have the results of the fourth survey ready to share today, and we can go for it a couple of slides. Yes, so just a quick reminder of our methodology here first. As with the other 3 surveys, we used a multimodal phone and web methodology here to once again survey a representative sample of likely November 2025 voters. The final survey was conducted in late July, so we wrapped up just the end of last week, so these numbers are pretty fresh. We had a sample size of 400 with a margin of error of about plus or minus 5 percentage points on that. That was also the margin of error on the May survey and the December survey. In January, we doubled the sample size, so there's a little bit smaller of a margin of error on that one of around 3.5 percentage points. One thing to note, because I'm going to make a lot of comparisons to our May numbers here, when we look at the results from each time point, that means that if we were able to survey every single likely voter in Washington County, so not just the 400 we talked to this time, we would expect the true population percentage to be within 5 points on each side of our polling estimate. So you can imagine sort of a 10-point band around the number. So keep that in mind when we're talking about May compared to July. Okay, moving on to the next slide, or next 2 slides, sorry. Yeah, so looking first at the overall environment, you've heard us talk a lot about this question and wondering if it was going to shift some as current events have unfolded, but we have seen really consistent numbers this year when it comes to how optimistic likely November voters are about the direction of the county. And that continues to be the case with this latest survey. So again, we had about 70% of likely voters saying that things are going in the right direction and about 30% saying things are on the wrong track. One thing I want to note here, I know you've probably all seen some polling estimates from around the region with some more pessimistic numbers. And for at least some of those, they've been asking about the Portland area rather than Washington County as sort of a geographical entity. So just keep in mind that we would get a very different outcome here if we were asking about, a different geography. Obviously, at the national level, this would look different. Things are very polarized right now. But when we're talking about the county as a whole, we're still seeing a lot of optimism. All right, next slide. Okay, so a new question back in May that we repeated this time around. We asked voters what they expect economic conditions to be like in 6 months. We see a little bit of movement on this question. About 2/3 still expect the economy to be worse 6 months from now, but we've seen pessimism soften a little bit. So you can see back in May, 30% said they expected things to get much worse. That is now down to 21%. We've seen a little bit of a fluctuation on the positive or the positive-ish end of the scale on the somewhat better. And then the same is a little bit higher this time, but that is a smaller change than we see sort of shifting away from the far negative end of the spectrum. Okay, and I'm sure this next slide is going to be of some interest to you all. When it comes to rating Washington County government as a whole, sentiment is once again largely consistent with what we saw in May. No real change in intensity here, so you can see that strongly favorable rating, 8% compared to 6%, really essentially the same with the sample size. And then on the far negative end in the dark red, strongly unfavorable ratings identical from May. There's a little bit of a difference you might be noticing in our somewhat ratings, but again, that's a really small change and it's not a meaningful one. So big takeaway throughout this presentation, I will probably say the word consistent far too many times, but again, just a lot of consistency in what we're seeing. Any questions on that before we move into the library levy?
I have a question.
Sure, yes.
Thank you. The net favorable on the far right side, that's a compilation of what we're seeing in terms of changes across the entire bar, correct?
So the dark, yes, the net favorable on the right is the total favorable minus the total unfavorable.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we can move forward to the library levy, and I'm sure you are all waiting for this one. Just a reminder here that we presented survey respondents with the full ballot question and summary in both the May survey and the July survey. So we have rate information here, average household cost, what that means per month as an increase, and then also all of the services, key services that the levy provides for. And then on the next slide, you can see that back in January, we had a little bit of a different question. At the time, that was just really the rate and household cost. But in spite of that, the big takeaway here is that support for the library levy replacement has been really consistent across our surveys. Obviously, good news here. In our latest survey, we are at about 2/3 support. With the margin of error, that's really not a big, meaningful difference from the 60% support we saw in May when you think about that band of margin of error around each estimate, but still definitely good news. One other slight difference I do want to point out is that you can see there's a little bit of a trend over time towards higher strong support. So back in January, we had 31% strong support, May was 37%, and then July 39%. Whereas the strong opposition in dark red has remained quite stable at about 24-23%. So not a big enough difference to confidently say that support is consolidating. It could just be noise or the fact that the January survey didn't provide as much information about the levy as we've provided in the last two surveys, but still a pattern we wanted to note because we see this in a couple of other places throughout the survey. Okay, on to the next slide. Okay, so here we wanted to simulate a little bit more of a negative environment. Given that we have a lot of voters out there who think the economy is going to be worse in November, we don't know how right they are about that. You know, we've all talked about this every time we've come to you about just all of the uncertainty about what's going to unfold next economically. So wanted to sort of get them into that frame of mind, and we present some pushback here, invoking cost of living in the area, talking a little bit about government waste and accountability. But we see the support is pretty resilient. So we wind up at 58% support, which is also right where we ended in May after a similar argument. So once again, very consistent numbers. In that case, though, our strong support wound up at 33% in the end. Here it's 36%. So again, it's a pretty slight difference. Looking at that on its own, it's not a meaningful difference. But since we're seeing that trend consistently, it's, you know, an encouraging sign. Okay, and then moving on to a slide that I'm sure looks very familiar to you all at this point, since you've seen this one for every levy, all 4 surveys, but we've added our final data points to it on the right, so you can see there the 65% after our initial ask, the 58% after that pushback, and then all of the previous polling and election outcomes. And you can see that the 65% support in our initial ask here, well, it is our high water mark for polling this cycle, other than back in December when we tested a replacement conceptually, but without attaching a rate to it, and got 67%. Aside from that, it's still not an outlier looking back across levy cycles. So you can see that back in 2020, a ways out from the election, and I should say that polling was conducted before the pandemic started, but at that point in time, support was at about 3/4. So that's the highest that has been seen historically. But then looking at the 2010, 2015, and 2020 elections, so the 3 green bars that aren't the far left, actual support among voters wound up being about 2/3 or higher. So what we're seeing at this stage, a few months out from the election, is still pretty consistent with other levy cycles, as well as consistent with what we've been seeing this cycle. There's just always, as we have been harping on, or just repeating every time because we want to be cautious in how we're interpreting the results, there's always the question of what happens between when we come out of the field with the survey and election day. Obviously, we finished the Sunday before last. Just last week, there was a lot of economic news. So this is definitely a good place to be in. We just want to caveat that with we don't know what's going to happen, in between this blue bar on the far right and the next green bar that we'll be able to add after November. Okay, any questions on the library levy before we get into public safety?
There are full crosstabs available, I assume, for this, and can we
Yes.
can we make sure, I would like those, if possible. I'm looking more at our staff, but if we can get those in our, or at least I would like it in my email box as soon as possible for both levies.
Me too.
Yes, we will get those over to Philip and he can get those out.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public safety. So once again, a lot of this is going to sound pretty redundant with everything I just said about libraries. We're seeing a lot of similarity both in the level of support and the patterns over time. Again, a reminder here, we presented the full ballot language in the 2 most recent surveys. And then on the next slide, you can see back in December and then January, we had shorter versions. There also was some slight variance in the average household cost, just as estimates on the average home value changed. And we also tested a 1 cent lower rate in the first 2 surveys. But those small differences aside, on the next slide, you can see that familiar refrain, as with libraries, we've seen consistently strong support for the public safety levy replacement. That has not changed with the most recent survey. You can see here in July, we have 2/3 support. And again, we see a similar pattern on the strong support. So starting at 20% strong support in December, up to 35% now. But again, there's the caveat that all 4 surveys aren't totally an apples to apples comparison, since the information that respondents had when they indicated their support was a little bit different. In December and January, they didn't get the list of all of the good things that the measure is funding first that's included in the full summary of the ballot question. Okay, and then on the next slide, looking at public safety after the same counter argument about cost of living, we again retain most of the initial support here. We go from 66% support before that negative statement to 59%. Same place we ended in May, but again, a little bit of a difference in strong support. So here we have 29% in the end. In May, we had 25%. So not a big enough change to confidently conclude that that is consolidated support for sure. But as I said, with libraries, that we're seeing this pattern across both levies and both ballot question asks on both levies is definitely an encouraging sign. Okay, and then finally, the last chart that we're going to have for you in this year's cycle, the historical context for the public safety levy. And similar to libraries, while 2/3 is the highest support that we've seen in this cycle's polling, it's also not out of keeping with some prior years. So both the 2010 and 2015 elections wound up seeing support at higher than the 2/3 level, and then the 2015 poll had support at 65%. So the lowest polling estimate we've seen was the 2020 poll here. There's a bit more of a range than we've seen for libraries. But again, the 2020 cycle was a bit of an odd one where the first poll, there was 1 poll for that cycle. It was conducted, COVID hit, and then election day happened in May. So that year is a little bit of a different story than all of the rest. Okay, and then finally, our last takeaways to leave you with for this year's cycle, and then we can move to any questions you have left. But as I said earlier, the mood of likely voters in the county remains really stubbornly optimistic in spite of slight pessimism around the economy looking forward. We also see that voter support for both levy replacement continues to be well above the passage threshold. So that is definitely good news. Full stop before I give any caveats. Just want to pause and let you absorb that piece. And take a sip of water. All that said, though, we do, as I said, after libraries, want to be mindful that changing economic conditions, changing world events before election day can influence ultimate support at the ballot. So I want to leave you with these final polling numbers, not as a prediction for November, where we'll be on election day. We're just too far out to be predicting that. But you can see this as a snapshot of where we are right now and how much cushion there is between that and the passage threshold. So we feel really good about that place. I think a lot of public agencies would look at these polling numbers and be envious. And it's also an encouraging sign that we've seen support for both levies remain so steady across time points. Obviously, there's been a lot of volatility, a lot of good and bad and probably mostly bad events this year. And so far, support has held steady. So that is great news. And then we also want to take a moment to say how much we appreciate working with you all over the past year, and also that you trusted our recommendation on breaking up the timing of the last poll here so that you can be more confident about where you are today moving forward than if our last poll had been back in early spring and we didn't have fresh numbers for you. So appreciate that. Appreciate getting to know all of you, and happy to take any questions that you have.
Board members, do you have any further questions on today's polling information?
I think this is by far the most studied, polled levy or two levies I've ever been involved in. So, no.
Well, I think the fact that we needed more time to work on the levy proposal independent of the polling has allowed us the time to do additional polling. And I want to just thank Philip and all members of the two steering committees, as well as these 4 subject matter experts from EMC, Ian, Sienna today, Jessica and Mandeep. Thank you very much for doing this work for us, and onward ho we go. And I think without further ado, let's keep going through the rest of the information.
If I can make one quick comment on their presentations. We talked about this, Lisa, last night with that person who saw this in North Plains. And so the slides that where we talk about the total numbers, which in this is slide 29 in our slide deck. I don't know about this one. Slide 27, I guess it is, where we tell the total 5-year estimated revenue and the total revenue in the first year. I think those are just too much numbers.
We're not there yet, so.
No, they made the presentation last night. $188 million in 5-year estimated revenue and $34 million the first year. I think those are, and the person was confused because he thought the library was actually raising more money than public safety. And so we need to make sure in our presentations, I think, that maybe we don't give them that humongous huge number. I don't know what we would do, but the number of 188 million over a 5-year estimated revenue to me says that's a lot of money. And I don't think we need to communicate that. That's just listening to his comment last night, and the public safety is 329 million. I think that's too much information process. So anyway, and making sure that we differentiate between public safety 66 cents and the library's 27 cents. Maybe that should be the focus. And I don't know. Just again, his comments last night I thought were pretty valid because you went through that. You and Al went through that pretty quickly. And yeah, had I not been on the inside, I would have wondered. That's a lot. So anyway, might be good.
Especially since, as Commissioner Willie is noting, we've mentioned this in prior presentations, a lot of our mayors in Washington County and the city councilors are new in their roles and haven't necessarily been through local option levies before. For their own jurisdictions. So this type of complete setup that we'll be seeing in a couple more slides may be a bit overwhelming for them with regard to the context. So, okay, let's switch over to the details of each of the levy proposals.
Okay, so there are no significant changes to the library levy proposal from the one that your board saw, the preliminary one back in May. We just made a few timeline updates on page 3 and 4 just to reflect the work that's happened since your board saw the proposal then. The replacement levy would help maintain and provide reading and learning support for kids and teens, including homework help for students, central services that efficiently link libraries together so users can browse collections and reserve materials for pickup, open hours and access to books, and materials for everyone in the community, and children's reading events, including story times. So this is what you were referring to, Commissioner Willie, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get ahead.
No.
Right.
It was I'll go through this and then I can, yeah. The proposed replacement levy would be a fixed rate of 37 cents per thousand of assessed value, running from July 2026 through June 2031. In 2026, typical homeowners with an assessed value, not market value, of $348,600 would pay an estimated total of $109.20 annually, or $10.75 per month. The annual increase in cost for the typical homeowner over the current levy would be just $54 per year, or $4.55 per month more than the current levy. And I just want to say I really appreciated that comment from that constituent in North Plains, and we have a levy meeting, the four of us tomorrow. I think it's going to talk about how we can kind of at least slow down and think about how to break up that information.
That'd be good.
And it may be giving, I mean, it is hard for an individual to sort of put that in context. And that's the point I think that was made. There are ways you could just exclude it. You could turn it into a 5-year estimate per person in the county, or use some other thing to sort of make it real for people. Cause I agree that the way it's presented is just like, wow.
Or simply highlight the rate
Yes.
line, bold that one, and the estimated monthly cost in the first year. Right, so because there are elected officials who've been through levy cycles before, and if you don't show them that, they're going to ask the question. So I understand why it's listed on the table. I think another thing, because I know the next slide goes to public safety, that is perhaps useful, because it keeps coming up, especially with libraries, is it's a slide right out of your library governance and funding, of which the levy is a piece of that, right? Is what are the steps towards, after voter approval, for the IGAs and so forth? You have that slide, and I can speak from my experience with the mayors thus far, multiple times in 2024 and 2025 thus far. I keep forgetting that process. So it might help some to either present it after this one, so that after the voter approval, remember, we're working on these major next steps towards that implementation of the levy cycle in June of 2026, or not, or at least have it in backup. Thank you. Anything else on the library proposal at this point? Okay, onward home.
All right, well, for the public safety levy, there is an updated levy proposal included in your packet as well. And similar to the library, it includes a few timeline updates to reflect the work that's happened since May, but there are no other real substantive or service changes in the proposal. But there are some areas of the proposal that I've modified to hopefully just provide a little bit more clarity or detail to help the reader understand what it is that this levy is paying for. So you might see
towards that end, I just want to say Erin has been great, because I read both of the descriptions in depth for each of these levies. And what I wanted to make sure is that as there is new board composition over the next 5 years and leading towards looking again in a future cycle, that we have enough documentation to help explain the whys and what fors.
Next cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really helpful. Thank you. And to that end, I did change a section in the community corrections part of the report just to reflect the state funding changes that we had. And so that does,
Or
you know,
don't
indicate
have.
an as of July, yeah, that we don't have as of July 2025. And one of the reasons for doing that is I talked a lot about, or the team put together a lot of discussion about the Community Corrections Center and our quest for getting to capacity at 215 beds. And based on the reductions, we're down to a capacity of 167. So I felt like even though that state funding is just part of the kind of bigger picture of why this levy is so important, and also the funding that we're working from. So
You're talking about the fourth bullet.
actually, I'm just kind of talking
In
about the
general?
proposal in
Okay.
general. Yeah,
Okay.
you'll see if you were comparing the preliminary proposal to this proposal, you might just see a few of those changes.
Thank you.
Yeah. But really the core message in the proposal is that the funding from the public safety levy will continue the core functions. And this measure will also enhance funding for a wide range of countywide public safety services that include the bullets that are on your screen: prosecuting child abuse and child pornography cases, combating the impact of deadly drugs like fentanyl and dismantling drug trafficking organizations, preventing domestic violence and expanding emergency assistance for victims harmed by it, fully funding the jail to keep those with more dangerous charges in court-ordered custody, investigating and prosecuting theft, car theft, break-ins, and graffiti, and preventing crime with mental health response team, job training, employment, and addiction services to keep youth and adults from re-entering the justice system. And then again, great feedback about this slide. We can think about how to present this in a different way. But the proposed replacement levy would be a fixed rate of 66 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, running from July of 2026 through June of 2031. In 2026, a typical homeowner in Washington County with an assessed value of $348,600 would pay an estimated total of about $230 annually, or about $19.17 monthly. And the increase in the cost for the typical homeowner over this current levy would be about $71 per year, or about $5.92 per month. And with that, unless there's questions on public safety.
So really what I'm getting out of this is our rate uses are the same. Our rate level, excuse me, is the same as it was with what you filed with the elections office. The uses of them remains the same. The only difference is that we've done some further polling work. You reflected that in each of these documents and the timelines, and at least on the public safety one, you've updated the text as well for further clarity. So the only reason we need to, quote unquote, take action is to formalize these documents, pure and simple, right?
Correct.
Easy. Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn over to Philip.
Okay, thank you. Just to walk down the timeline so far, as we continue with the marathon. I don't know if we're 3 miles away, or it feels a little longer to me, but we're headed the right direction. So this is just some of the milestones. There's lots more work than what we've detailed on a single slide, of course, but we've convened, as several of you know about and participated in, our interested parties briefing back in June 11. That seems like an eternity ago, but nonetheless we did that, and then we filed the measures on July 10th. And we began Speakers Bureau training on for both levies. I know with the public safety levy, we've gone through 4 rounds of that, and this is just training staff on the non-advocacy educational work that they are now ready to start doing out in the community. In terms of what the public safety levy does and library levy does. Let's see, and then we and I think Marnie mentioned the outreach at the fair. I don't have the total, but I know we spoke to hundreds and hundreds of voters in our estimation. Can you say?
For libraries, I think, and I might have to correct this, but I think it was 6,400 people that we talked to just at the library table. So because we had our own counter, so it was much bigger than that. Yeah, it's great.
And the public safety levy was right alongside library levy there, and then we have public safety has a great opportunity with National Night Out happening at multiple locations this very week. Yes. So that all said, there's huge value in what you're doing and what staff are doing with the outreach, starting with those city council meetings that began last night. And I think hearing your board reflect on that and refinements to how we communicate, that's part and parcel with why we've highlighted that your elected colleagues at the city level as a first kind of cohort audience, if you will, of outreach. Very, very important. We'll convene our second interested parties briefing next week on the 13th, and we've asked EMC Research to come to that, and they might even go a little bit longer than they did with your board. Of course, your board is welcome to attend that session as well. We'll be in the auditorium here at 4 o'clock, and then I'm sure several around the room will attest that voters really start to clue in a little bit more after Labor Day. So all of the outreach is great that we've done so far, but we really need to scale to a larger degree after that Labor Day milestone. And that includes presentations to the CPOs, service clubs. We'll have hopefully social media that's approved. Just as a footnote, everything that we're doing with this non-advocacy educational effort, we're vetting through the Secretary of State's office for the sought after safe harbor status that agency provides us. And so we're hopeful that they approve of the social media content that we're asking for. Right now, they got us a thumbs up on a one pager that we blew up to be a big poster. The slide deck that you saw maybe at these city council meetings, you'll get to see those many times, I think, before November 4th. And then we have other collateral that's coming along for both levies. That we're working through this with the Secretary of State's office. They can be pretty strict on how we talk about numbers. I'll just point that out to this group. So you'll see staff, zeroing in on the numbers. That's notwithstanding the very good input that I heard this board give us about slowing down and paying attention to maybe some of our colleagues that haven't been through cycles before like this with the local option levy. That's well noted. The direct mail piece for both levies, we're targeting for that week just before the ballots arrive, just days before, ideally. And again, those would be vetted with the Secretary of State's office. And then ballots are scheduled to arrive for most voters on October 17th. It takes a little while. Sometimes it might be a couple days after that. Election Day on November 4th. That's the finish line for the marathon. So we're looking forward to seeing you there.
I've heard questions.
I have a question on, you've got the direct mail that's sent to voters, the
By the
13th.
county.
Yeah, I
Yep.
understand. Are there any more specifics around those 4 days? And I'm thinking about the coordination of others who might be sending mailers.
Oh, okay. It's an interesting phenomenon. What we'll do is we'll work with a pre-sort firm that will target
Right,
a day during that week. And I
Oh.
think and then we need to talk a little bit more tactically about how that all unfolds with both levies. But it's not lost on us how the order that was researched in the polling of library going first, library being the measure that we filed first, that has a beneficial effect that we've discovered in our research. So it's
On public safety, is that what you're saying?
on libraries, actually.
libraries,
Yeah,
okay.
it doesn't do any harm to public safety.
Okay,
And
go
so
first. I get it. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes,
So that
thank
you may, I'm not saying we've decided because we haven't even, this is what Aaron Cover calls an audible that I'm doing right now. You may see a similar sequencing. But even if we were to sequence it, it's not a precise laser guided thing.
Okay,
You give the content to the pre-sort firm and then it arrives when it arrives.
thank you. And I was just asking so that we can plan for direct mailings from other sources.
Is this direct mail? Is it a different piece for each? Okay. So the county objective safe harbor mailed content will be one piece for public safety, one piece for library.
Correct.
Thank you.
One piece per measure.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's it on my slide.
Next
Yeah,
slide.
questions?
Next slide.
I think we asked.
So board, we've gotten the polling information, we've gotten the 2 updated documents, and the proposal is we move forward with the action item at our board meeting on the 19th, which I think I'm a little puzzled by.
As of the 19th.
No, because of the posting of meetings in board announcements this morning. That's what I'm trying to find. But let's see, neither here nor there. Are you all set, folks? Do you have anything else you need? Okay. Great job,
Just the
team.
cross tabs in our email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. We're going to move then to our next topic, which is on Farmington Road. Yeah, we don't have a business meeting as announced. That's all. I was really puzzled by the set today. That's why I triple checked it. Okay. Hello. Take it away.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Stephen Roberts. I'm the Land Use and Transportation Director, joined by Deami Valentine, our Transportation Planning Manager, Section Manager. And we're going to walk you through our Farmington Road Concept Plan work. This has been ongoing for a little while. I want to know we have Julie Sosnowski's here. Julie's been the project manager, been doing a job as we've been going through this project. And so I'm going to turn over to Deami to walk through the presentation, and then we're here to try to answer any questions that you have about where we're going next. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Quick overview of the presentation. So wanted to share kind of the project overview and schedule, kind of walk through the community engagement milestones, talk about the project goals, and then walk through some of the design considerations and alternatives that the team evaluated, and then share with you the recommended planning level, design concepts and cost estimates, and then share kind of what the next steps are and as we continue conversations with ODOT on a jurisdictional transfer. These are the discussion questions that we'll revisit at the end of the presentation. So project purpose, really, this has been a long conversation. This effort really is intended to develop a concept level design that meets the community's needs, and developing a planning level cost estimate to help advance conversations. And this work really has advanced through, it became an initiative really after the Aloha Reedville study. It became a priority through that effort. And then there was a little more urgency following 2 fatalities between 2017 and 2021. And your board authorized us to pursue a grant, the Transportation Growth Management Grant, in partnership with ODOT and Department of Land Conservation and Development in 2021. And this is really to help set us up for advancing conversations around jurisdictional transfer for the last remaining segment of ODOT facility between Kinnaman and 198th. Back in 1998, there was an agreement between us and ODOT for the transfer of Farmington Road west of Murray Boulevard out to 219. And this is just that last little piece.
It would, so the project is successful when it meets these 3 project purposes. And given 1998, I certainly hope that not only can you get to that design level and jurisdictional transfer, but we can get the darn thing built before we hit the 40-year mark.
Great. That's great. So this effort kicked off in 2024. It feels like it's 2021.
Some projects you've been working on.
Yeah, it has. We kicked it off early. And this, as Stephen noted, was led by our senior transportation planner, Julie Sosnowski, and really supported by our LUT team at capital projects, operations and maintenance, as well as traffic and survey. Also supported by ODOT directly, and then in support with DKS Associates was the consultant team that brought on board. And they did a deep dive in kind of the needs and opportunities and constraints analysis. The project team did community engagement throughout the project, primarily at two kind of key milestones, and I'll walk through some of the findings from that. Develop some design alternatives for consideration, and we're now kind of in the process of wrapping that up, which is why we're here today. This work was supported by two advisory committees, a technical advisory committee made up of staff representatives from not only internally within the county, but also the cities of Beaverton, Hillsborough, ODOT, TriMet, Clean Water Services, Beaverton School District, Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, as well as the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. They met 5 times over the project. It was also supported by a project advisory committee chaired by Commissioner Fye. They met 4 times, and it included representatives from neighborhood communities within the corridor, representative from the Community Participation Organization, CPO6, Unite Oregon, Central Cultural, AARP, Oregon Walks, Street Trust, Westside Transportation Alliance, as well as Aloha Business Association and ODOT leadership. So the community engagement involved, as I mentioned, kind of 2 major milestones. We had a design workshop that was conducted in December of 2024. We had notified folks in the corridor. Over 7,300 addresses were notified about that opportunity to participate. We had over 70 participants, good engagement, good conversation. We shared with them some of the kind of early design work and needs analysis there. That was followed by an online open house, which was conducted in May. And that had similar kind of notification, a little bit more of a robust participation during that engagement. We also met with and held briefings with CPO6, the Beaverton Bicycle Advisory Committee, as well as the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. And throughout this process, at those 2 milestones, we also did tablings at Aloha Farmers Market, as well as the Beaverton Farmers Market. So this project was built upon some guiding principles. This was really, these evolved out of existing policies in our TSP, as well as alignment with some of the jurisdictional transfer considerations as those conversations advance, and really helped frame the qualitative and quantitative evaluation that the roadway design alternatives were evaluated against and helped inform our recommendation. And those were safety, natural environment, economic vitality, community livability and health, and feasibility. So I'm going to walk through some of the considerations for the design. And first, the motor vehicle consideration. So this is designated as a 4/5 lane arterial in our transportation system plan. It is also identified as a long-term facility of interest for county jurisdiction. It carries 18 to 20,000 annual average daily vehicles, 10% of which are trucks. You can think of this in terms of similar facilities or like Baseline Road west of Brookwood or Brookwood south of Baseline. Those 2 facilities are comparable. The consultant developed and the project team evaluated 3 different alternatives for consideration for motor vehicle mobility long-term, and looking at a 3-lane cross-section, a 5-lane cross-section, and then a hybrid of the 2, which was ultimately what we landed on, which is a 3-lane for most of the corridor, but there are 2 major intersections, 185th and Kinnaman, that requires some additional capacity at those locations. So we have some through-lane movements that were identified as needed in order to meet mobility targets in the long term.
So I'm wondering, because also I'm a little curious on the project extent, because you keep saying west of Murray, but Farmington, immediately west of Murray, is already 5 lanes. And then the intersection of Farmington and 170th
170th.
has gone through a heck of a lot of construction updates, even over the last couple of years. So it's just a little curious about.
I should be specific about the extents. The
Yeah.
extents of this effort is Inman Road, west to 209th was the study area. The section of ODOT jurisdiction is just 198th to Kenneman, so it's about a 1.5 mile segment of Farmington Road.
Great.
We already have the other part.
Yes, that's correct. And then I think east of Murray is the city of Beaverton.
Yeah. So really the fundamental question that I have with this slide and the next one for considerations is how does this section that you're looking at compare to the same sort of considerations but to the east? And I'm looking for gross level estimates, nothing precise at all, not engineering, real dot the I's, cross the T stuff. Is it similar? Is it greater? Or is it generally less?
It is generally less. East of 217, I mean, you kind of think of like travel sheds and
Yeah.
and the cars that it's collecting or the people movement that it's collecting, and it increases the further east you go. And so further west you go, it's not collecting as many, but this project
looking
did
out into the
consider 20-year growth.
Which is one reason why I asked that question, because the section that you're talking about is ripe for further urban development. And that's really what we need to keep in mind out into the future versus the conditions that we see today. So,
Yeah, good point.
thank you. Of course.
On the traffic numbers that you got here, and realizing South Hillsborough isn't fully built out yet, but is in the process, of course. And then this actually would be a great arterial off of TV Highway, jumping on Murray, and then this to get you out into the country. And so, is that anticipated? I think in your daily vehicles, and is that mostly this 20,000 people? Is that kind of from 209th to Murray? Is that what you anticipate? It's a drop in, drop out. It's not a pass through.
No, I mean, it includes both local and regional trips. So the corridor certainly is accommodating a variety of trip purposes, including certainly access to our rural community. But generally speaking, the demand grows as you travel further east, and it is certainly accounting for, at least in the modeling, is accounting for the future growth in South Hillsborough, Witch Hazel South, which will use this facility to a certain degree.
Yeah,
I mean, it's used now to get out to the country.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just think.
I mean, I've used it to do that.
This being the country.
Yeah, but I was thinking of some of the bottlenecks that are in there now probably inhibit that being your favorite
Yeah,
route.
right. Not always going to be the most efficient.
Yeah. So when you do something like this, I would imagine the daily vehicle travel will be considerably more once this is all finished up and South Hillsborough is built out and all those kinds of things. 'Cause this,
Yeah, and it will
it's a pretty cool direction to go.
It will become a more attractive route, certainly with any improvement out there, compared to existing conditions.
Because there aren't any other alternatives.
Yeah. Yep.
Very unimproved.
Yeah. And Chair, maybe to answer one of your earlier questions, I was just looking at traffic count data, and it looks like just east of 170th, The traffic counts on Farmington currently are about 25,000, 26,000 versus the 18 to 20,000 that we're seeing
I
as we go west.
was really looking for that, not the precise numbers, but high,
Order of magnitude.
medium, low.
Yeah.
That's all. Gross level. Thank you.
So we did ask for a response to this from our community members, especially at that first workshop, and we did hear feedback that there was a preference for a 3-lane now, an earlier investment sooner than later, and this was also favored. We heard that through the project advisory committee as well. And I think primarily in terms of it meeting kind of multimodal safety considerations, the reduced right-of-way needs, and as well as environmental impact and lower costs overall. So kind of the feasibility of having a near-term improvement. Real quick, transit considerations. This was, as I noted, TriMet was at the table, and certainly we want to consider the needs of transit within the corridor because it is served by 2 TriMet bus routes today. Line 88, which is a regular service, it's generally 30 to 40 minute frequency between 198th and Kinnaman. And then line 52, which is a more frequent service, which serves the 185th Avenue corridor all the way to Kinnaman Road. And so it is a well-used corridor from transit standpoint. The project team kind of looked at, what are the kind of opportunities for improving reliability of transit service, stop considerations, access considerations for accessing transit. And just to note that this would be something that would be further refined once design kind of advances, but that we're putting a flag that we want to make sure that this is addressed as we're having those conversations and the design advances. So on to bicycle and pedestrian facility alternatives. So the project team started with 4 alternatives. That was winnowed down to 3, where we advanced these for broader community consideration. And these designs were informed by kind of an understanding and what we've heard from the community that just greater protection leads to better utilization. So that's kind of the underlying foundation guiding principle around these alternatives. Alternative 1 is a raised bike lane and sidewalk option. So this would have some type of a elevated vertical separation between the motor vehicle and the bicycle lane with some type of either standard curb or rolled curb with a planting strip that separates bikes and pedestrians or the sidewalk. Option 2 is multi-use path only. So this would put greater separation between the bikes and the vehicles with the curb and then the planting strip. It does put them in direct facility with pedestrians. There would be, as kind of illustrated here, some kind of a tactile strip that would indicate separation between bikes and pedestrians. And then alternative 3 is, again, kind of a hybrid of these options, which would have more of a standard treatment, buffered bike lane adjacent to the travel lane, planting strip, and then a narrower multi-use path. So it would kind of give bikes an option to choose one or the other, depending on your comfort level. So I'm going to walk through just some kind of pros and cons of each alternative that we've identified. We did want to just note these are based on kind of existing examples that we have in our community. Raised bike lane is a treatment that been more utilized by Hillsborough. This example is Western Avenue and Beaverton. Alternative 2, the multi-use path, is design that was used for Jackson School Road, south of Evergreen. And then the option 3 is more similar to what's currently constructed at Shoals Ferry Road in South Cooper Mountain. So quick pros and cons. I'm sure there's more. It's probably a longer list here, but these are just some of the pros and cons that the project team heard from community members. The pro being that the separation between bikes, cyclists, and people walking is favored, reduces the conflict there. Does provide a little bit more of a direct route for confident cyclists. However, it does, there is kind of a false sense of security potentially with having, you're still adjacent to travel vehicles that could potentially merge or have some conflict with merge into the bike lane, for example. There was also some operational considerations, challenges with garbage and other delivery trucks having to access some of the single-family residents that are located along the corridor, needing to stop in the travel lane, for example. And then just overall kind of maintenance concerns from our operations folks in terms of this is a kind of a new facility type that we don't have current existing infrastructure to maintain. For the multi-use path, this one is seen as, and what we heard is provides the greatest level of separation, really more family friendly, more attractive to less confident users, cyclists. However, it does present the potential to have conflicts between cyclists and pedestrians. In this case, garbage and delivery vehicles are also needing to stop in lane. And then also similar kind of maintenance concerns around maintaining the facility, just not having an infrastructure in place for that. And then alternative 3, we have similar kind of considerations, although this provides kind of the option for the cyclists. Those who are more confident can use the in-street facility. And then garbage and delivery trucks, that consideration, it allows them to pull out of the travel lane. So there's some potential benefit for vehicles. And then in this case, those cyclists who are using a multi-use path, there's greater conflict with pedestrians because it's a narrower cross-section on the multi-use path. Also, this option does have greater right-of-way impact, more impervious surface, more environmental considerations. Also, the curb-to-curb distance in this option does potentially lead to higher vehicle speeds.
How much more is the right of way impact on this one? Oh, we got
Off the top of your head,
3 feet.
3 feet.
3 feet each
Oh,
side.
6 feet.
6 feet. Okay. Thank you.
So I have a legal question back on alternatives 1 and 2. Legally,
Mhm.
a bicyclist cannot be required to use the multi-use path, is my understanding of Oregon law. Is that correct? Confirm that?
That is a good question. We would have to get back to you on that. I think there is some room for interpretation there, but that would certainly be a
Police officer cannot ticket me
for using.
being in the vehicle lane,
Anywhere.
with
believe
or
that's
without.
Correct. Yeah,
Believe
you're considered a
Considered a
vehicle. Yeah.
Yep. And maintenance isn't just a concern, it's very much an issue. No matter which alternative.
Right.
We just don't do it, and we don't do it enough.
Which one of those are the most expensive?
Well, that's a good question.
It also depends on if we're doing a 3-lane build out or a 5-lane. You know, we're at the design phase, not the.
Yeah, we have, it's the range between the options were actually not as significant as we were anticipating. It was about $5 to $10 million difference between the 3 options. The multi-use path actually being the second least expensive. The raised cycle track is the least expensive option.
Oh, okay.
But we did want to share just the feedback that we heard from the community during the online open house and tabling events, there was favorability. I mean, there was generally everybody liked any improvement out in the corridor. So 3 or better on average for all options, but there was preference for the multi-use path, significantly above the other 2 options. So I did want to highlight another kind of operational improvement that was considered through this effort, which was the Rosa Road intersection, which has this weird kind of skew to it, wide angle intersection, which results in high turning speeds, challenging for pedestrians to cross. And there's just an issue with proximity to the 179th intersection. So this was identified as something that we wanted to put some more thought into. And the alternatives that were considered included realigning Rosa Road with 179th. Also just a full closure of that intersection, as well as a right in, right out option. We advanced 2 for kind of public comment on, because the realignment had it didn't perform actually as well from a performance standpoint, and also has significantly more right-of-way impact. It results in a full take, for example. So the full closure and right in, right out options were advanced for community feedback, and we heard preference for the right in, right out option.
So just from that map right now, and I don't know that I've driven this exact road, but from looking at this map right now, you can turn left from Rosa Road eastbound onto Farmington.
Yep.
That has got to be some dangerous stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are people coming from the McDonald side and crossing left and right too. So.
Chaos.
Yeah,
It's complicated.
Yeah. Any improvement will be better. So in terms of what is being brought forward as a recommended planning level design concept, it is a kind of combination of option 2 or alternative 2, the multi-use path. For the majority of the corridor, it can be accommodated. And this is really being responsive to what we heard from the community, the project advisory committee, conversations with the Beaverton Bicycle Advisory Committee, and then alternative 3 as an option in specifically in as you approach intersections, the bike lane would probably need to come down to the street grade. And then also there's segments within the corridor where there are single family residents where it probably makes sense to have an at grade option because of the kind of potential for whoop-de-doo, the roller coaster effect of a multi-use path.
Yeah, one comment I heard that I want to bring forward is, especially from the hearing impaired community, the shared path, the hybrid I'm looking, if there's a distinction to where the bike can stay and the pedestrians, that there's a clear line, because sometimes people saying on your left or ringing their bell, they can't hear. So there was that feedback that I got recently after we had our pack. So if we can make a consideration, whatever alternative format we go with, that the pedestrian and the bike, there's a clear distinction where someone is biking or walking.
Yeah.
So that we don't rely people to say on your right, on your left, or the ringing their bell.
Or the existence of people who have 2 kids or stroller or
It's almost like a fast lane.
there are
slow
always
lane.
people that are
Right.
using the multi-use bike lane that aren't on bicycles.
Yeah.
Has been my experience to date.
You
I
know,
don't use them.
color code them like they did in Germany. And the first time I was at the wrong color coded lane, I found out pretty quick.
Right.
Found out what it meant.
That's right. Yeah, they take no prisoners there.
That's
They're
right.
back to-
You.
They're not.
Yeah.
I've experienced that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the intent of the tactile strip in the multi-use path option there. So it would provide some type of a delineator between the two, fast lane and slow lane like that. So the preliminary planning level cost estimate has a range because it is planning level, and we're not really to a level where we can have much of a refined estimate, but it is for the segment between 198th and Kinnaman. The range is around 62 to 71 million, and that's in today dollars. So that would grow when the project is actually funded. We do anticipate a little bit more refinement between now and when the project is finalized in about a week, maybe. And then really the purpose here is this will inform like a our TSP project list, potentially a regional transportation plan project list. So it's that level of kind of, this is a cost estimate for consideration as we're pursuing funding opportunities, as we're having conversations with ODOT and the jurisdictional transfer discussions. So obviously this will continue to be refined, especially once design begins and do actually refine the preferred design alternative. So I want to touch on the transfer process. So as I noted, there's kind of a longstanding agreement between ODOT and Washington County to transfer Farmington Road. There is a fairly new kind of process that the legislature established in 2023 via House Bill 2793, which created this jurisdictional transfer advisory committee. The chair of that committee, conveniently, Sarah Iannarone, was also on the project advisory committee. It is an application-based system. The advisory committee takes those requests, the applications from local jurisdictions, and reviews them and provides a recommendation. I think it's 3 per biennium, and those recommendations are advanced to the legislature. There's no actual funding commitment, but that they would recommend for funding. So it helps tee up the project to help facilitate that transfer. And this project really provides kind of the foundation for the application. Those applications, the pre-applications began in October, so this will feed nicely into that. And this helps address kind of the public engagement expectations, agency coordination, as well as that planning level concept and cost estimate.
Are we the lead on completing that application, or is ODOT?
We're working through that with ODOT. I think it is intended that we will be the lead. There's kind of an expectation.
But they've been participating.
They've been at the table
And
throughout the process.
certain?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's definitely in their mission statement to try to get the jurisdiction of Farmington Road
they wanted
transferred to the
They
county.
want it out.
I remember in one of the JPAC trips, Stephen Roberts, you being recruited to take over this, to hand it over. I mean, so I think ODOT is ready to hand over the jurisdictions, but I think we need to do, well, from what I learned from Stephen, we need to do our due diligence to make sure, liability is addressed.
Yeah, and this really does set us up, from our standpoint, kind of sets up our position in having those conversations. So in terms of next steps, the project team will be finalizing the report, providing an executive summary here shortly, and then we anticipate bringing this back for board acknowledgement later this year. And as noted, we'll continue to kind of work with ODOT on those jurisdictional transfer conversations and setting us up for that application process if we get the kind of thumbs up, which leads us to our discussion questions for to start you off. Just, are there any questions, concerns? I think we heard some of those already, but any other concerns about the recommendation? Kind of a thumbs up? Are you in support of us advancing with this as a planning level design concept for inclusion, and then anything else that you would find helpful before acknowledging the concept plan. And I'll just say for the acknowledgement is kind of grant led. That's kind of an expectation for the grant that we have some acknowledgement of the concept plan.
Can we do that on the consent agenda versus an action item?
Yeah.
Great.
And bigger picture, where does the, like, to get it built, what do you think the capital stack looks like?
Well, it is
Are
on
we
the
expecting the state to pay for all of it to bring it up to sort of a level of good repair before we take it?
that's kind of the starting point. I think there's an expectation that we want to have at least a state of good repair, and this providing the basis of our kind of preferred design alternative also sets us up for, we want to see at least the facility brought to an urban standard. It may not be, this might be a little bit more enhanced of an urban standard, but
So we might pay for the difference in that, basically.
potentially. And we do have, it's identified as an eligible project for the MISTIP large project match.
I just wanted to get a
fund,
general
so
idea of what you all were thinking.
Yeah.
There could be federal dollars that.
Yeah, and I think to that point, the Jurisdiction Transfer Advisory Committee again makes those recommendations. That gets forwarded to the legislature for consideration of potential project funding. The amounts, as Diami said, would be based on at least some semblance of state of good repair, which is a term that isn't explicitly defined anywhere. So just working through that process with ODOT and potentially the committee, the Transfer Advisory Committee. And then using that as the basis for a negotiation with ODOT for what the state contribution could be to the project. As Diami mentioned, it's eligible for the MISTIP Large Project Opportunity Match. We could potentially consider federal grants with a grain of salt, and there may just be other program opportunities for us to consider.
How many miles is it from Kinnaman to 198?
About 1.5. I think there is an expectation that I think there's a 20% match through that jurisdictional transfer advisory committee application process at the local level. So that would be kind of the minimum.
Similar but different to this question and what you've just highlighted. What are comparable projects that you've already done over the last 30 plus years in working with the state and jurisdictional transfers? Or is this somewhat unique?
That is a really good question. The Farmington Road improvements to the east predated my tenure at the county, so I don't know exactly what role the county and the state played in that. But my understanding is that was one of our early. It was a federal aid project, but using MSTIP as the local match funds. So it was done probably late 80s under a very different set of federal funding criteria at the time. And then we've haven't had a lot of other conversations with them, but other parts of Farmington Road were rural, so really state of good repair meant just getting it paved, and then we funded the reconstruction of it's called the Philip Harris Bridge, just east of or west of River Road.
Yeah. So really, this it's very positive that this has already been identified through the MISTIP large project map list. So that's set up well. Acknowledging this level of design work is another one of those setup pieces so that we can then go after these state opportunities. So it seems that we have, through that large project match, the opportunity to satisfy that 20% match. And then someday, if this does get approved, then it can go through all of the construction planning work and all of the construction actual work for moving this forward, which is many years out. But nonetheless, in order to get there, we need to do these pieces.
Yeah, these are
So,
critical milestones.
Yeah, I absolutely applaud this effort. I don't have any other questions relative towards this planning level design concept. I just wish, after being on this board for 6.5 years so far, that we had the opportunity to advance our state of maintenance. So I'm getting really tired of seeing more miles of bike lanes and multi-use paths and sidewalks that are in a state of no maintenance. Essentially, there's a little bit here and there, but it's not anywhere near where it needs to be. But you know, such as it is.
And that's been one of our hesitations with building significantly enhanced facilities that create yet even larger maintenance challenges. We really aren't resourced to do that. So we're all looking at the state for our special session to bring us some additional funding that would help support maintenance. And so, and I actually had a really good conversation with our operations and maintenance division manager yesterday, and we were talking about this project in particular and just exploring what are the opportunities for us to make sure that we're properly resourced to maintain a facility like this. So what are the steps we should take now to help ensure that 5 years or 10 years from now, when we have a project like this, that we're prepared to be able to take care of it.
The other thing that concern is way too heavy of a word. And I know I've mentioned this in prior meetings, but I'm really impressed with these motorized non-vehicle devices, the uni wheels, the motorized scooters, the foot scooters, the fact that people have them so they can sit, and they're moving along 20 to 30 miles an hour. But I've also seen, in addition to being a solo rider, my husband and I frequently ride our tandem. And I've noticed, since we need to get a new tandem, the proliferation of electric tandems. And these designs do not accommodate that. And as I've mentioned casually to some of our staff, our rotary designs don't do a very good design for that either. So, so I just use the lane.
Could I just ask a quick question here? When you talk about maintenance, are you talking about the sweeping of
Yep,
the?
that's what I am.
That's,
Yes,
I
thank
thought
you
so.
for clarifying.
I just wanted to,
because
because
there's all kinds of crud.
but we're not talking about maintaining curbs or anything else that might be in disrepair. We're talking about debris.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which seeing these uni wheels, it's like, holy jamoly.
You know, I broke my collarbone on baseline.
Yeah.
And it was debris in the.
Yep.
Stephen, as you guys are thinking about, I mean, there are multiple jurisdictions that are working on and are ahead in the jurisdiction transfer process that you all were describing. What struck me when I asked you how many miles or distance this is many of those, I think, are going to the state with requests to cover many more miles for much less money. And you probably need to be prepared for questions around that and or have a plan. And I like the only one I know very well is the Tigard Hall Boulevard piece, which in 2022 dollars was in the 20 to 25 million dollar range and was like 3.5 miles. So that is dramatically different in a cost per mile. And I just know you're going to get that, like you guys are going to get pushed on that big time by the legislature at some point or that committee, whatever the process is.
Yes. Yeah, we're definitely aware.
Okay.
And I think the Tigard request must be assuming a significantly smaller state share of the total project cost.
Very possibly. I think you need to be ready for that.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I think it'll be coming.
Agreed.
In your first 3 questions.
I mean, I think part of this effort, going from a 5-lane cross section to a 3-lane cross section does reduce the cost pretty substantially overall. And I think, but that the major difference is still the need to make those improvements at the major intersection, which is a little different than the Hall Boulevard example.
Admittedly.
Yeah.
I just think, yeah, you're gonna have to tell the story, I'm pretty sure, compellingly.
The jurisdictional transfer committee, they, some of the applications that came in and some of the ones they approved, was there something that was similar? Or do you know how much are they giving their maximum or minimum amount that they gave to each application or applicant?
Yeah, currently there's no actual funding commitment out of that committee recommendation. It's just a recommendation to the legislature to potentially allocate funds. But hopefully that may change. We'll see on the legislative action.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of hard and fast rules. So it's really put together an application and negotiate and go forward and see what happens.
Okay. Well, that's actually good to know because I thought that for some reason, the story I told in my head is the jurisdictional transfer committee approves the application, assigns a dollar amount, and then that's it. But it sounds like it goes back to the jurisdiction, and then we gotta, okay, Aaron Doyle got her work cut out once it gets to there. Okay, thank you. Thanks for, I don't have any questions and in terms of what you have listed. I'm in support of the second, and I don't have a question on the first one. And then I don't need any additional briefings or information, but I just want to express my gratitude and my thanks to you. When I say you, all of you, and Julie, you did a phenomenal job of facilitating and coordinating and organizing those meetings. And I also want to express my gratitude to the community members for coming and consistently coming to the meeting to really put their expertise. We had very technical people that were engineers and really just people who are subject matter experts and people who do this for a living. So it was really exciting to be in that space and feel we're remarkable.
So as an assemblage of 5 individual commissioners, are we ready to move forward with the acknowledgement? Thank you.
2 thumbs.
We'll see you at a business meeting near you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it for today's agenda. Seeing no other topics, we'll adjourn today's work session. Thank you.